Good morning, and thank you all for joining us. With me today are the city's public safety leadership, Police Chief Paul Pazin, Fire Chief Desmond Fulton, Denver Sheriff Elias Diggins, and Interim Executive Director of Safety Armando Sadate. I'm also joined by our Executive Director of Public Health and Environment, Bob McDonald, and City Attorney Kristen Bronson. As we are all keenly aware, our community is experiencing a disturbing rise in crime. Everyone in our city deserves and has a right to live in safety, and anyone who threatens that sense of security is doing harm not just to the people they're directly impacting, but to our entire city. This challenge is a top concern for me and my administration, just as it is for mayors and cities across this nation. This isn't just a Denver challenge or a metro area challenge or even a Colorado challenge. It's an American challenge. There also isn't one singular cause for what we're seeing, and thus no one singular or easy solution. But we will not play politics with this challenge of crime. This isn't a Democratic or Republican issue. It's an issue that affects everyone, and we must address it squarely and without regard to politics. That's the approach I will take as mayor. Here's what we're facing in our city. Even though Denver police officers took more guns off the street last year than they ever have, we know there is an overwhelming number of illegal guns still out there. There's the devastating impact of the opiate crisis, the emergence of cheap fentanyl and newer, deadlier versions of meth that are fueling drug addictions and violence and criminal acts. Youth violence remains prevalent, with kids settling arguments with guns they shouldn't have access to. We also have a system that, regardless of the best intentions, is releasing criminals back onto the street to reoffend and prey on vulnerable individuals. Now, addressing these challenges requires a coordinated approach that includes local, state, and federal action, as well as thoughtful and effective collaboration among law enforcement, addiction, and treatment providers at the community at large. We can't solve these issues with law enforcement alone. This is a multifaceted public health crisis, and we can't simply arrest our way out of it. Now, that doesn't mean we aren't going to hire more police officers. We are. My 2022 budget calls for recruiting and hiring more police officers and sheriff deputies. Denver's public safety agencies have established a national reputation for reform, and we've led on use of force, body-worn cameras, de-escalation tactics, co-responders, STAR, and other areas. Programs like STAR are force multipliers. The more we can respond to emergencies with an unarmed social worker, the more we can free up police officers to go after the drug dealers and gun sellers, and we're going to continue to scale up these efforts. I also authorized sheriff deputies to file criminal charges in jail incidents instead of police officers, and deploying 2 street enforcement teams to address lower-level crimes will also free up police officers for more crime prevention work. And we're going to build on several initiatives we began last summer. The precision policing model deployed by DPD in 2021 to establish 5 hotspots has resulted in dramatic decreases in gun and violent crime in those areas. We're going to maintain those hotspots. We're going to hold them so they don't slip backwards. And we will expand this work to 3 new areas, as well as focus on our downtown core. Illegal behavior and drug activities near Union Station, which has even spilled over to the airport, are simply unacceptable, and we will not allow them to continue. We are bringing the precision policing model to Union Station and other parts of downtown, which will have a meaningful impact. And while I'm at it, let me just thank our Denver Police Department and the various other agencies who have partnered with us in the Union Station effort. Today, they've made over 522 arrests. Our officers and the other agencies are doing their best to make it very clear that the type of activity that was going on down there before and during the holidays and even now will not continue, and we're going to bring every resource to bear to make sure we stamp it out. We're also ramping up our multi-agency, multidisciplinary public health approach to youth violence prevention, building pathways to justice, increasing safety, and expanding educational and employment opportunities for youth through city-supported, community-led, and youth-informed programming. That means, one, deepening coordination with the City of Aurora through the Youth Violence Prevention Regional Compact. Two, supporting programming and operations that enhance safety in and around our recreation centers. Three, investing in community-led prevention strategies through microgrants. And finally, launching a community partnership with Lifeline Colorado to operate the first in a network of youth empowerment centers to provide wraparound, trauma-informed programming for youth and families. Listen, Denver has done more than most cities in addressing illegal guns. We launched a partnership with the ATF, FBI, and U.S. Attorney's Office to leverage resources on large gun cases and remove illegal guns from our streets. We've also recently passed an ordinance focusing on removing illegal firearms and gust guns from our streets in partnership with regional, state, and federal authorities. Let me also thank City Council for passing those ordinances. Now, bond reform was undoubtedly the right thing to do. However, too many people, too many of them of color, were forced to remain in jail on low-level offenses under bond amounts they couldn't afford to pay. Unfortunately, the reforms also opened a revolving door loophole that is letting offenders get out of jail on PR bond only to reoffend repeatedly. This, too, is completely unacceptable. We cannot allow people who represent a public safety risk to be back on our streets. And we will work with the courts, the DA, and the state to address this challenge. Now, I've asked the City Attorney, Kristen Bronson, to review and make recommendations regarding Denver's current risk assessment tool and possible alternatives for use in bond setting. This is part of an ongoing review by pretrial services, the courts, and other stakeholders. We want to ensure that violent offenders who pose a risk to public safety are being flagged. We want a predictive tool that is fair, but also one that helps save lives. And I do want to acknowledge the phenomenal work of county courts who have done some great, innovative work to advance community safety efforts. Let's also be clear that the problem of rising crime is only one aspect of what we're seeing on our streets. You and I know this. Safety is being compromised by the rising problems associated with untreated mental illness and drug addictions. We're going to increase efforts already underway to connect people with services and treatment and support them into recovery. We're also going to rework how we release these folks from jail so they're released into a supportive environment and not simply back onto the streets with no safety net. With DPD's forthcoming Assessment Intake Diversion Center, better known as AIDS Center, we will be creating a welcoming, trauma-informed center in a central Denver location that will operate 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and 365 days a year. When individuals are arrested in connection with disruptive behavior, officers and clinical personnel will make immediate evaluations based on observations of mental illness and addiction, and will connect these individuals with services, case management, or shelter. Through diversion, resources can be focused on treatment, and we take away the opportunity for drug dealers and others to prey on these individuals. Now, the legislature will be considering the governor's budget soon, and thankfully to our governor, it includes additional funding to focus on treatment and beds. And the Attorney General, Phil Weiser, is working to address this terrible fentanyl and meth problem that is putting lives at risk. I thank both of those administrations because we need their partnerships. I'm encouraged that state leaders are considering legislation to address the deadly spike in fentanyl and meth on our streets. The proliferation of drug abuse in the last 2 years must be halted. These are just some of the tactics we're ready to deploy to address these challenges throughout 2022 and beyond. Today, I'm releasing an outline of our comprehensive public safety agenda for the year. Let me be clear. We're going to remain focused on addressing these problems until they're solved. And here's where we need our community's help. Be engaged. If you have a friend or a family member suffering from addiction, call out for help so they can get into treatment before they might overdose or worse, die. If you see your son or daughter or see your friend getting into fights with others or taking those fights to social media, let us know so we can address it before it turns violent. You can reach out to Colorado Crisis Services at 844-493-8255 or by texting TALK to 38255. We can work together on this, and it's going to take the community to be engaged for us to make significant impact on the challenges that we are seeing. The reality is, if you see something, say something so we can get ahead of it before it turns tragic. These are the stakes. Fentanyl is killing people on our streets right now. People are getting their hands on illegal guns and they're shooting and killing people right now. Criminals are taking advantage of vulnerable individuals, and when we arrest them, they're getting right back out to do it all over again. Right now in Denver, Colorado. And now I'm not going to allow this to continue to happen on my watch. I also understand that this is a marathon and not a sprint. And while we all want to see this scourge of violence and activity with people with mental health challenges and drug addictions on our streets end today, we're going to work as quickly and as swiftly as we can. But we must do it right and not fast, so we make sure that we end the scourge now and that we don't see it come back. It's going to take all of us at every level to bring the necessary resources to bear. And my commitment to our residents is doing all that we can and everything in my power to keep Denver safe. And with that, I'm going to ask Chief Paul Payson to come up and talk about the plan on the Denver Police Department. Chief?
Mayor, thank you. I want to piggyback on what the mayor talked about here for a minute. And really, we have to continue our focus, identify these areas within our city where a disproportionate amount of crime is taking place, and work in collaboration with our community in order to keep the people of Denver safe. Data showed us in 2020 that 5 hotspots accounted for 49% of the shootings and 26% of the homicides in our city. Utilizing our collaborative crime prevention program, part of precision policing, in these violent hotspots, we were able to have dramatic decreases in 4 of the 5 hotspots. We went reductions ranging between 37% and 100%. For example, one hotspot had 17 shootings in 2020, and through our partnerships and collaboration with our community, it went to 0. Now, again, because of those partnerships, we want to continue this type of effort in 3 additional hotspots: 14th and Federal, Mississippi and Lipan, and Dartmouth and Havana. We know that working with our community in a collaborative approach, as well as our city partners, can help us expand on the successes that we are seeing and work to address these increases in violent crime, property crime, and traffic safety issues. Now, as the mayor indicated, we have some challenges at Union Station. And although the Union Station didn't show up on our 2020 data with regards to shootings and homicides, we have significant challenges that must be addressed. We are doing this in a collaborative approach with our RTD partners, as well as outreach, utilizing our case managers and substance use navigators to try to get people to help. However, we are also stepping up our enforcement efforts because the type of behavior, illegal behavior that we are seeing at Union Station must be addressed. And through the efforts of our women and men that wear this uniform, in the last 3 months, we have increased our focus on this illegal behavior. And as the mayor indicated, more than 522 individuals have been held accountable for their actions. Now, we have to ensure that we are continuing to offer support for folks, as well as holding individuals accountable for their criminal behavior. With that, one of our continuing partners is Sheriff Elias Diggins. We're going to talk about who's going to talk about what the Denver Sheriff's Department is doing to help us keep our community safe. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. The mayor eloquently stated that safety is being compromised by rising problems associated with untreated mental illness and drug addictions. The Denver Sheriff's Department is taking bold steps to address both. One of the focuses for our department this year has been standing up our crisis response team. This innovative approach to helping people in custody will consist of mental health professionals who are Denver Sheriff employees. They'll be tasked with working beside our deputies in our jails 24 hours, 7 days a week. This will prevent mental health crises from occurring by providing mental health treatment and assistance to people in custody by getting to know each of them. They will also respond to incidents where people in custody are suffering a mental health crisis to help de-escalate these situations. This will eventually prevent uses of force and help these patients not assault staff or others. The mayor also referred to increased efforts already underway to connect people with services and treatment and support them while in recovery. As we look at the intersectionality of the criminal behavior of people and addiction, we are continuing to take measured steps to help those in our custody come back to the community better than how they came into our facilities. 97% of the people who come into America's jails will eventually be returning citizens. So it is our duty to give them the tools, resources, and support to become productive. Along with our partners at Denver Health, we will be expanding our medicated assisted treatment programs to help those in our custody with addictions to find a way to control them. They will also be given tools and support necessary to stay in this space. We will increase our efforts to further the innovation and collaboration of our programs team, who work directly with the Second Chance Center, Servicios de la Raza, and other providers who help people when they leave our custody. We know that those who are stabilized and have support systems commit less crimes, and the Denver Sheriff's Department is dedicated to doing our part to further the mayor's vision of a whole-scale, comprehensive approach to reducing and preventing crimes from happening in this great city. I'd now like to introduce the Chief of the Denver Fire Department, Desmond Fulton.
Thank you, Sheriff Diggins. As part of public safety and this public safety action plan, the Denver Fire Department is committed to many things, but the things I like to talk about today are outward facing, the things that affect you as citizens when you call 911. Excuse me. We're dedicated not only to service, but to quick service. And when you call 911 and you have an emergency, it's vital that we get there in a timely fashion. Improving answer calls, processing, turnout, and response times, striving towards continued compliance with NFPA 1710 is not only a goal of ours, but it's something we're committed to each and every day. Other things that we value and appreciate are recruitment and retention. Right now, we will continue with a data-driven, hands-on approach, the way we look at not only recruitment, but the way we're approaching recruitment with a more robust mentoring opportunity. Continuing the youth fire safety camps that we have, we have the opportunity to have hundreds of children attend these camps every summer and plant that seed of opportunity so that these young boys and girls realize that this is not only a career opportunity that's viable, but a wonderful career opportunity that is just merely something that they can achieve down the road. Pre-academy mentoring focuses on physical and mental preparation, so when we do hire people to be future firefighters to serve you, that they are not only the best, but they're the best prepared. Lowering the ages of our EMT applicants to 18, it's a stepping stone, so that way, as an EMT, they learn the ways of the medical system, how we interact with Denver Health, and then in turn, as they become a firefighter, they are prepared and to be more successful. And finally, recruit a workforce that is representative of the city we serve. Denver is a very diverse city, and I'm proud to continue to focus on that diversity and have the men and women of the Denver Fire Department to wear this badge to look like the citizens that we serve. With that, I'd like to thank you, and I want to introduce the Executive Director of Safety, Armando Soldate.
Thank you, Chiefs. Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Sheriff. We want to make sure that we are taking a public health approach to public safety, ensuring that those that are in our criminal justice system get the help and resources that they need to be successful. That is why we're focusing on alternative responses, including expanding resources like STAR and other alternate responses, providing invaluable resources to our community. Additionally, we're working to establish a community care diversion triage center. This is the aid center that the mayor talked about. This will allow for individuals who are arrested for low-level quality of life crimes to be connected to resources and case management rather than be booked into jail. We also need to be thoughtful about our public safety personnel. They have been put through incredible stress and trauma, being on the front lines of the pandemic, and these past few years have been incredibly difficult. We need to recognize all that they have gone through and give them the support and resources they need to be effective public servants. This includes ensuring that they're adequately staffed. They're stretched really thin. My leadership team has taken a holistic approach to reevaluating our recruitment strategies and making tangible changes based on feedback from all those involved. Lastly, we're working on better incorporating equity, diversity, and inclusion in our recruiting efforts. As Chief Fulton mentioned, we need to ensure that we have a workforce that is representative of this diverse community that we serve. I want to thank our public safety leaders, our public safety staff out there that are out there and are committed to making our community safer. And I am incredibly proud to be part of this team to work with you all to make our community safer. And with that, our mayor will give closing remarks.
Thanks, Armando. I'm going to ask City Attorney Kristen Bronson to come on up as well, and Executive Director of Public Health and Environment Bob McDonald to come up as we get ready to go to the Q&A for the conference. As we close, just the prepared remarks. Simply just say, I want to thank the public. We've obviously have a great city, 730,000 people live in the city, call it home. We've had an amazing economic rise, amazing attraction for people to want to live in our city, call it home. But the number one attraction, of course, is that people feel safe in our city. And when that's threatened, we've heard from a lot of our residents, our neighbors, who have shared with us the concern and wanting us to do what we can to abate the challenge. And that's exactly where we're attempting to do. I will tell you that what you will read in our plan is a dynamic plan. We're staying in the laboratory. Each one of these departments will remain in the laboratory, looking at best practices around the country, working to find solutions to the challenges that we face. Gabby, we're ready.
Alrighty, we're getting ready to get started. First, I want to go with Ivan Rodriguez from Denver 7. Remember, you may have to unmute yourselves to speak up. Ivan.
Alrighty, we're getting...
Ivan with Denver 7.
Hey, good morning. I first wanted just a clarification. When we're talking about the 3 hotspots, is Union Station also considered one of those hotspots? Does that bring us to 4 hotspots? And the real question here is, what can we expect to see in these locations? For example, 14th and Federal, Dartmouth and Havana. Are we talking more police presence? What should people in that area expect to see?
Ivan, nice to hear your voice. So, great questions. Union Station is not one of the violent hotspots. So what we are looking at for that metric is the shootings and the homicides, and areas where those are concentrated, the most violent types of crime. However, we are not losing sight of the challenges that we have at Union Station. In many ways, that's the welcoming center for the city of Denver. Folks coming from the A-line and seeing our city. We need to make sure that those travelers feel safe, that our folks that utilize public transportation, that they feel safe, and we are doing helping individuals that may be battling substance abuse and mental health challenges. So Union Station is an area of focus. It's not one of the violent hotspots. Now, as far as the activity that will take place, each hotspot is unique. Just like we explained last year when we had launched this precision policing collaborative approach to the 5 hotspots previously, the continued 5 hotspots. There are unique aspects of each one, and our partnerships are designed with our community leaders, our business leaders, and the other agencies within the city in order to address those hotspots. Now, 4 of the 5 hotspots have had tremendous success. We want to maintain the successes there, maintain those partnerships, identify what is working and where we can improve. And we are also expanding to those 3 additional hotspots, again, based on shootings and homicides, the most violent type of crime. Thanks, Ivan.
Thanks, Chief.
Alrighty, Matt Jablow from Channel 9.
Thank you. Chief Payson, the mayor alluded to, and you have alluded to the crime increases last year. Could you be a little more specific? How much did overall Part 1 violent crime increase last year? And what about shootings and homicides specifically? And then second question, if I may, how much of the increase of the past 2 years do you think can be attributed to the various effects of the pandemic?
All right, Matt, I'm going to ask for some clarification on that second question, but and I believe we have an interview scheduled to go over these numbers. We have seen an increase in homicides. We went from 95 in 2020 to 96. This is the most that we've seen in our city in more than 3 decades. We have to really get our arms around this. Shootings have also increased. Burglaries, auto thefts, car break-ins, as well as robberies. And our officers are focusing on guns. Guns are used 85%, or were used in 85% of our homicides. Illegal guns, guns that were in the hands of previously convicted felons, guns that were stolen, guns that are by definition illegal. We need to make and our officers demonstrated that by taking 2,095 guns off the street, more than any other year in our history. We also focused on auto theft, for example, a crime that increased 99% over our baseline. Our officers' efforts, enforcement efforts, were a 46% increase in arresting individuals for stolen cars. So happy to dig into the numbers a little bit deeper, but we are seeing increases in those crime categories. And then let me try to restate the question, and then if you could just confirm this is it. You said something to the effect of the last 2 years and whether or not this is pandemic related?
Matt, can you re-ask your second question?
So I'll try to dive into that issue.
Hello.
Matt, we're going to sit down next, I believe Monday anyway, and we'll dive deeper.
Yes,
Thanks.
How much of the crime increase in the last 2 years do you think is a result of the pandemic?
we're going to be studying the crime increases not only in Denver but across the country for many, many years. But we also have to take a look at some of the additional contributing factors that have taken place. So we study the homicide and the causal factors in those particular areas. And one area that is very alarming is narcotics-related homicides, homicides that have a narcotics nexus. So for example, in 2020, we only had 4 homicides that we could attribute to narcotics activity. In 2021, the year that we are reviewing, that number jumped to 15. So as we are seeing dramatic increases in fentanyl and methamphetamine use, we are also seeing this manifest itself in shootings and homicides. So there's a lot of areas that need additional review to try to identify causal factors to the drivers of these particular issues, and we'll happily sit down with you next week and talk about it. Thanks.
Okay, Elena Alvarez with Axios. Elena, if you're with us, remember to unmute your phone.
Next.
Alrighty, do I have Sean or Justin with CBS 4? Alrighty, is there anyone else on the line that we've missed?
Hi, I'm so sorry.
Is that Elena?
I'm so sorry. Yes, this is Elena. I actually dropped off the call. Is it okay if I go? I'm also happy to wait in line.
Yep, go ahead.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. Yeah, this kind of plays off of the previous question, and I just want to make sure I am crystal clear on it. So throughout the pandemic, city leaders have pointed to a perfect storm of factors fueling rising crime. Has that thinking evolved at all? And if not, why not? And I'm also curious if the city is doing anything actively right now to really study the crime wave, like, for instance, hiring researchers to look into what's really going on. Any progress of thought that you can share with us would be really helpful. Thanks so much.
Elena, great to hear your voice. It's been a while. So great questions. Again, we take a deep dive into causal factors. We do that so we can try to prevent future acts of violence, future crimes. And we certainly do study this with great extent. We research what's going on here locally, what's going on nationally, promising practices, smart practices across the country on what we can learn and how we can improve. In the future, we will be talking about enhanced partnerships that has outside academic review of what's taking place and how we can improve. This department, as well as this city, considers ourselves a learning organization. And we are not set in our ways in trying to figure these types of issues out. We are constantly looking for those smart practices, those best practices out there so we can improve. And as the mayor indicated, we have led in this space as a city with our co-responder STAR outreach case coordinator, and now this new approach with the assessment intake diversion center. These are innovative approaches that we will continue to expand upon, but we owe it to the people of Denver to really dive deep and figure out what's going on, how we can collaborate with the state legislature, with the district attorney's office, with the probation, parole, pretrial services on what's working, what's not working, and how we can keep the people of Denver safe. Thank you.
I'll just add to that question, that point, because I think it's a good one, and Chief, thank you for the way you answered it. And I think being a learning organization, learning city, is really a great way to characterize Denver, and that's why I made the point, we're staying in the laboratory. But we got to also acknowledge that people are dying right now on our streets through gun violence. That we got to also acknowledge the fact that people are dying right now due to overdoses and fentanyl-laced drugs being sold on our streets. that we have a mental health crisis, public health crisis right now in our streets. And so while we continue to try to learn from mayors and police organizations around the country, we have to move in with the best tools we can and the best knowledge we have to try to solve some of these challenges right now to keep Denver safe. So we're going to do that, and I'm excited. We have such a wonderful team here who is not too proud to say we've got a lot to learn, and we've got a lot of things that we can do, but we got to know exactly what's happening in our city. Go ahead.
All right, Nicole from Fox 31.
Hi, two questions. One, are there plans to change penalties for repeat drug offenders at RTD, or what are the specific plans to help issues there besides more police presence? And then second, aside from rehab and jail, how do you plan to address the issues of weak penalties for criminals?
So we have a multi-pronged approach here, and let me explain to how we look at this. It's called firm compassion. And the reality is that while we are compassionate with those who are sick with drug addiction, we recognize that they got to be held accountable as well, and that sometimes the best way to help them is by closing the portals on them and to let them know that we're going to bring some firm reaction to the actions that they bring on our streets. The reality is they must be safe, and the people on our street must be safe. And so with the city attorney's office, the district attorney, and the courts in partnership with everyone, the police department, we're looking at every tool we have. If you're in possession of drugs, that's illegal in our city. That might also be the avenue for us to help you to get the treatment you need, because this is a serious illness. And by the way, fentanyl will kill you. It will drop you dead. I watched recently as the courts announced that they have, or at least the DA in New York, is bringing charges against those individuals who served actor Michael K. Williams drugs laced with fentanyl. That's the kind of thinking that I think cities and counties around this country need to follow. You're responsible for it, but we also got to help those who are sick. And sometimes, and I've learned this in my own family with addiction, sometimes when we get our hands on them in terms of in our jails, it's the best time for us to help them. And that's what we're going to work to do, and that's the firm, compassionate part of it. So looking at every tool we have, and we will be at the state working with our legislators and trying to inform them as best we can what's happening on our streets and asking them to make changes, particularly to the most recent fentanyl laws that were passed last year. Anyone else want to join?
Alrighty, Connor with Westward.
Yeah, hey, so I saw the stat, 522 arrests since November 2021 in Union Station and downtown. My question is, what were those arrests for typically, and how does this number compare to the usual number?
Connor, good to hear your voice, and we'll follow up to give you specifics. But our focus is on the individuals that are causing the most harm. The individuals that are selling fentanyl in particular. As the mayor indicated, this is a deadly substance, and it is causing great harm in our community. So our primary focus is trying to get the dealers off the streets. Now, with recent legislation, the dealers have changed tactics, and they're carrying just under 4 grams of fentanyl in our efforts to hold these folks that are dealing a deadly substance accountable. We'll continue to focus our efforts there. We'll continue to have outreach workers and support folks like the Substance Use Navigation Team help us connect people to the resources, the folks that want it, that are willing to accept it, but we must hold individuals accountable for the criminal behavior. There were warrant arrests that have taken place in the Union Station corridor area, as well as trespassing offenses. Folks that were barred through area restriction from the particular location and subsequently held accountable for being in a location that by order they were expressly prohibited from. Thank you.
And just one correction, I was just reminded that the fentanyl laws were changed at the state legislature in 2019, I think I said last year. Next question.
Is there anyone that we've missed?
Yes, this is Elise, the Denver Post.
Go ahead, Elise.
My question is about the bond reform. Mayor Hancock, you mentioned, bond reforms are kind of creating this revolving door of people coming in and out of jail. What specific bond reforms are you talking about? And do we know what percentage of people who are released on PR bonds are reoffending while they're waiting pretrial?
Yeah, I don't know if we know the percentage, but I can tell you a couple things that I want to just share with you. One, we need to make sure that people are afforded the release, the privilege of a PR bond, don't pose a risk, safety risk to the people of our city. And we need to make sure that we have a tool that helps our courts and our district attorneys assess that. And that's what Kristen Bronson and her team are doing. Two, we need to recognize that we are seeing people who are being released on PR bond. Before an officer gets back on the street filing out the report, they are driving past these individuals just being released. And that's really an issue. And then only to repeat a criminal act on our streets. And so Chief Pazin and department officers have shared those stories with me more than enough times for me to understand that there is a challenge here that we have to address. And we've had many conversations with our courts, our DAs, and with state legislators and the governor, and recognizing that we believe in criminal justice reform. We must find the balance. And we may have overcorrected in a sense, and we have to go back to the table to make sure we find that balance to keep people safe. I'll ask Chief or Kristen Bronson if you have additional thoughts on that.
Elise, great question, and I think we're sitting down on Monday as well. We have to point to the practice itself, and there are many changes that have taken place that are causing challenges with repeat and violent offenders. So we have to look at all of the changes that have taken place and identify what is working and what is not working. We have to do this in collaboration with the district attorney's office and the state legislature in order to identify how we can do better, because we are seeing repeat and violent offenders out in our community at alarming rates. We have arrested individuals 6 times for auto theft in 1 year. That is a problem, and we have to work to identify how we can prevent this type of crime, because the state of Colorado leads the country in that particular area. And the only way that we're going to get it fixed is by looking at the data, analyzing it, coming together, and figuring out solutions. Happy to talk more with you one-on-one, Elise. Thanks.
Just further to the risk assessment tool that is used in setting bonds that the mayor referenced. That tool is being looked at and has been looked at over many months now by our pretrial services team, and many stakeholders have been engaged in that effort. That's going to be presented to the court, and we'll be reviewing that data and those recommendations and forwarding those to the mayor as well.
Let me thank the leaders of our public safety department and the members of the media who've joined us today. Again, we are going to continue our efforts in the laboratory to find best practices and opportunities to end this rise in crime in our city. But I'm confident that all of us working together, including the community, we're going to get where we need to be, and that is back to a safer city for all of us. Thank you all. Have a great day.